was not really formally practiced in the sense that we didn't have any weekly rituals where we prayed together or any of that. So it was pretty much an open landscape for me, and and spiritualism is something that I, had to discover and evolve on my own path outside of any formal indoctrination or community support. And so when I say spirituality, it comes from a fairly narrow perspective, and maybe not unique, but fairly typical modern day aspect of not being well connected to a community of religious or spiritual practitioners. And so wandering around in sort of the wilderness of spirituality, to me, the only indications that I could see um, was feeling states. So spiritualism for me is not necessarily um, abstract concepts. It's a direct physical feeling experience. And so all of my great awakenings had some sort of body realization with them. They weren't just simply a cognitive math problem to be worked out. So even though the voice in my head said fasting, because it was just a spontaneous thing, I didn't really attribute it to being a religious experience, because there's no real feeling with it. It was just an insight. So you could say now in hindsight that that was a religious or spiritual experience, but at the time, it didn't feel that way to me, for context. Now, that being said, clearly there is this divine vehicle that we all have that is a resonant part of a spiritual practice, and an evolution of sensitivity, greater sensitivity to being aware of the divine, and being, merging and becoming one with the divine. But again, I don't have a specific dogma about that. I just know that in a very crude sense, the body is an essential part of spirituality, and you need to take care of it and treat it as a temple, to have some daily and routine hygienic practices around it to keep it clean and functioning, so that you can not be obstructed to feel the greater sensitivities around you, whether that's empathy and compassion for yourself or others, or a much more ornate intellectual communion at a higher level with an intelligence that is beyond day-to-day existence. I believe in all that. I think that's all part of the various wisdom traditions and can be experienced. But my fundamental principle is that the body is essential, is an essential key to unlock those potentials. And fasting is probably one of the most powerful ways to get that key working.
Thank you so much. I've got it that very well. Uh, the other thing I really wanted to add on the spiritual part of the fast is your dreams. When you start, before you start the fast and after the fast, did you see any changes in the dreams? Or during the fast, do you have any things that happened to you during the dream, the time you sleep?
Well, it's a great point now, and I think dreaming and dream work is a practice, as is fasting in my experience. So the way I look at dreams is that it's a part of our existence and can be cultivated. And part of my wisdom tradition practice is lucid dreaming. So there has been an ongoing evolution of uh, of dream work in my life, and fasting does affect that, the quality of the dream work and the intentionality and the vividness and the power of dreams, without a doubt.
Wow. Uh, just before I started the record, you talked about healing of disc, or were you an athlete?
uh, what's that last part you said about healing of my disc? What?
Were you an athlete, somebody doing athletics or some things like that, or
Yes.
football, soccer? Yeah.
Yeah, I've been a lifelong competitive soccer player since I was 5. I was, planning to go pro. And in the United States, that's not a remarkable accomplishment. It's if anything, it's probably a downgrade of potential, because we're not a big soccer nation. So there wasn't a lot of structural support or economic incentive to become a professional. It was just a personal passion of mine. And I played at university and ended up doing a little bit of semi-pro playing for New York Athletic Club and when I was up in Manhattan. But and have traveled and played soccer competitively overseas. But my point is that for me, playing soccer was a very powerful baseline for understanding my body's potentials and for as a barometer for my knowing if I'm well or if I'm unwell, because I could see how well I was expressing myself on the field. And, you know, when you do something for 20, 30, 40 years, 50 years, it becomes an indelible part of you and an easily visible canvas by which to measure your own potentials and your execution of skills that you've cultivated. So for me, having a herniated disc in my neck was effectively ending my soccer career was untenable for me. I just couldn't accept that fact. So I would have done anything to overcome that the end of that experience. And fasting in that particular instance enabled me to go back out and play competitively again and still play competitively. So the actual injunction, was a 10-day water fast, at which point I went from being in the most excruciating pain in my life to having no pain at all.
Wow.
And that, when we say fasting is a cure and everything, no, fasting enables the body to cure itself to the potential that the body can. And this is important for people to understand. Fasting isn't a miracle thing that you bring in from outside the body. Fasting is just stopping the abuse of the body with external stimulants and enabling the body to itself realign, readjust, and renew to the extent it can. And there are limiting factors of what the body can do, of which one of them is the internal state of the body itself. The other is the environment around the body. You cannot purify the body greater than your surrounding environments. So one of the rate limiting factors of purification or rapidity and healing is deterministic by the environment that you're in. It can either be supportive or destructive to that process. The other piece is also what's the degradation of the internal body, the ecosystem, its full nutritional potential, its stem cell potential, its healing and immunological potential. It's everything that is beyond a level of complexity for us to really discuss in any real physical way in which we can influence. We just have to be aware that there's a level of influence that our body is going to have, which we can come to know intimately by repeatedly fasting or having fasting as a process, as well as our surrounding environment is going to have some influence on our ability to improve. And those two things in combination will determine how successful you are in any curative or therapeutic protocol that you hope to accomplish. So for me, at that point in my life, because perhaps I was athletic, because I maybe didn't have anything else going on in my life that was detrimental to my healing process, I was able to eliminate pain, a symptom of pain, in my neck in 10 days on a water fast. Now, that being said, did that cure the disc? Did the disc magically go back in? Did the sutures on the spine encapsulate it again? No, highly unlikely. I never went back for a second MRI because I didn't want to and I didn't care. It felt good. I regained mobility without pain. But my mentor, Dr. Stanley Bass, who helped me break the fast successfully, said, look, 10 days is likely not enough time to really address a situation like this. However, if you want to go on a therapeutic diet to continue the healing effects, I'll put you on it. And that was my discovery about how important nutrition was, because he put me on an omnivore raw food diet. And raw food, I was on a 100% raw food diet for over a year. Raw food is really, in my experience, the least abusive and the most most curative type of diet you can be on if you want to have a therapeutic effect and or continue the therapeutic effect of a fasting protocol of any duration. So that was the 1-2 punch. The therapeutic fasting, 10 days water alone, brought me out of pain. The raw food for a year probably continued those therapeutic effects to the point that I was back competing heavily in soccer, and still am today with an aged body. I'm going to be 60, and I still play in the Open Men's Premier Division here against and with the 20-year-olds, and would never be able to do that and punch way above my weight if it wasn't for fasting and raw food. Can I pause for a second here and put you guys on mute? I'll listen to what any questions people have, but I need to go get my son at this point and bring him in the car, if that's okay.
Okay. Maybe I'm going to be asking some questions.
Sure.
I
Yeah.
hope you're going to hear me.
Yeah. Let the audience ask whatever questions, and then I'll answer them.
Okay. One thing I wanted to ask myself before maybe somebody else talks. People will be so much interested in your dry fast journey, especially how many days have you taken in the fast? How long have you fasted? Because it's coming clear that the main things that brought your healing, one, the environment you talked about. Then you have also talked about the water fast and the raw food that you've stayed in for 1 full year by the assistance of your doctor. So people are going to be interested to know, how about dry fast? Have you done any dry fast before? And maybe for how long? Something like that. Maybe you can handle that. Then everybody else will ask a question. I hope you have heard me, Rob. And somebody else can ask a question. If you are ready to you want to ask 1 or 2 questions, you can just ask him. He's hearing us, so then he can answer all of them at the same time. But something has come clearly in this meeting today from Rob. It's clear that fasting just helps the body to get well. It allows the body to get well. So the fasting that does the curing, but the body itself does the curing. But the main thing that you really wanted to understand is that Rob, are you a wet faster or a dry faster? That point, I think, is still coming clearly. Maybe you're going to respond to it. And lastly, but we thank God because of what has happened. You got healed, you got well, just with 10-day water fast, and you became well. I think that is very impressive. And so many people who cannot do the dry fast should take this as the way forward. If you are not, your condition is not allowing you to do a dry fast, you can do a water fast. Just probably. I don't know if Rob, you have heard me. Thank you.
Okay, I'm back. I'm sorry about that. So
Okay.
I heard about the water fast, dry fast, the differences or the questions around that. And
yourself. Oh, sorry.
Was there anything specific about water fasting and dry fasting?
Exactly, because from your story, you have done water fast. You are more experienced with water fast. How about dry fast? Have you ever tried dry fast, total, without taking water?
Oh yes, without a doubt. And in terms of the sort of relative levels of power of purification and transformation, I would say that diet is destiny. What you eat is going to be deterministic on your overall quality and wellness in life. And so to a certain extent, the more you can elevate your eating to foods that are really in alignment with the quality of life that you desire in your lifestyles, the better off you're going to be from a health and wellness perspective. The next level up is definitely water fasting. And I don't consider intermittent fasting or meal skipping, as I like to call it, really fasting. It's just a way of eating. And for fasting, when I use the term fasting, I'm talking about complete abstinence of food, no salt licking, no electrolytes, no teas, no coffees, none of that stuff. That's really dieting, and that has its place and its purpose, and there's nothing wrong with that. But for clarification purposes, fasting is the complete abstinence of food and only pure water, or nothing at all in the case of dry fasting. And so water fasting is incredibly powerful, but it is in my experience completely different experience than dry fasting. And dry fasting I would put on a continuum of being even more powerful than water fasting, and more transformational and rapid. And so it's, if you were to go to a carnival or a theme park and you were to look at the rides, the gentle ride is water fasting. The crazy roller coaster that flips you upside down, could be considered dry fasting. You need to be prepared for the intensity of the experience. And you would want anybody who anticipates dry fasting or water fasting to be psychologically and emotionally grounded and understanding what they're getting into, and not just willy-nilly charging into either of those dimensions, because they're very powerful and they have lasting effects and consequences. It's not just the fast itself that's powerful. It's what results after the fast in terms of the body's transformations that you will need to contend with and either build upon or repair. So the dry fasting, I've done, I don't know how many dry fasts I've done. The longest I've dry fasted was just recently. I did 11 days. I broke on water because I had to go to a funeral, and I was worried about crying and becoming dehydrated. But I went to the funeral. It was about a 7-hour drive there and back. Came back, and then after that next day, on the 12th day, I resumed dry fasting again, which I'll have to tell you, I believe is a mistake. So I dry fasted, to the end of day 12, 13, 14, 15, and day 16, broke that dry fast with water and then onto food. And what's interesting is that the dry fast on those first 11 days was incredibly powerful. And if you read Dr. Filanov's work, he does a very excellent representation of what the day-to-day experience is. So just look at his 20 questions about dry fasting, which you can find at, I think it's dryfastinginfo.net or something like that, or .info. But anyway, Filanov and the Russian schools are fairly comprehensive, and I would say incredibly knowledgeable in the medical application of dry fasting for therapeutic purposes. And if there's any questions, they've got far more depth and breadth of knowledge on the subject than I do. But in terms of the fasting experience, they're absolutely right. You don't want to water fast first and then dry fast. I think that's a huge mistake from every angle. Secondly, the duration of a dry fast, there's no real reason in terms of beneficial effects to go past the 12 days. Um, I think you can sufficiently accomplish in 12 days what the perception of a longer dry fast would bring you, other than hardship and grinding. And my perspective is never to grind through any fast, water or dry. The body's telling you something if it's a grind, and you should listen to your body always. So water fasting is similar with when I deal with my clients. I never put them on a water fast past 10 days. That's sufficient for most people. Again, I'm not trying to do a therapeutic medical intervention in folks. I'm trying to put them on a wellness path and provision them with the tools and the mindsets and the capacity to guide themselves through life in a much higher level, and of wellness, and manifesting what they really want. And from my perspective, it's sufficient. 10 days is sufficient. 12 days is sufficient in dry fasting. But again, the environment is absolutely consequential, absolutely in both. So dry fasting is the top. You know, in terms of power, do you want to go to become a breatharian? Do you want to shed the body that you got? Do you want to go to the next levels? Well, those journeys and those evolutions are beyond my intentions and practical knowledge base. But as far as dry fasting is concerned, you know, it's something you should prepare for, not just in entering, but also in exiting. And you should really think about it in a much more holistic perspective. I see a lot of people on Facebook and everything, dry fasting, yo-yo dry fasting for weight loss and fat loss and everything. They think this is a highly leveraged tool to shed body fat. And, you know, maybe it is, but from my perspective, it's more powerful than that. And I would hate to ever advise somebody to constantly jump in and out of dry fasting just because they want to drop their body fat. I think the more appropriate perspective is to use it as a transformational start and then to modify your eating, because that's your destiny. You can't fast forever, but you're going to eat for the rest of your life. So, you know, fix what's broken. Don't continue to try to solve one problem by creating another. But that's my perspective on it. And so, you know, if you want to ask, you know, about the transformational aspects of dry fasting, or, you know, sort of, you know, how I'm using that in my life and with my clients, you know, I think that's fair game. But just I want to give you a general perspective about my opinion about where dry fasting fits in terms of the overall continuum of transformational power that fasting brings.
Wow, thank you so much. Do you have anybody else who has a question? Because our meeting is scheduled to end in about 2 minutes. If somebody else has a question, but Rob, I think we are going to have a little more time with you, and if we can create time during the weekend, we can have more session with you, because you have so many things. Yeah, exactly. Maybe Saturday. I don't know about your program, Saturday or Saturday. Okay, if we are okay with Saturday, we can do it on Saturday. But
Just
somebody
ping
can
me
ask
on
a
WhatsApp.
question.
Go ahead.
Somebody has a question. I think if somebody has a question, you can ask before you end the meeting. We have so many here. If there is no question, is somebody asking questions? Yes? Okay. We are still going to have Rob on Saturday. We're going to schedule a meeting because my YouTube, not YouTube, but Zoom is giving me a warning that in 1 minute we should have ended the meeting. But I've recorded almost 3/4 of this meeting today. We are going to hear Rob give you his experiences. He's going to talk to you about everything else. I think this is one of the most wonderful meetings we have had before. It's wonderful. Thank you so much, Rob. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Frederick. Then thank you, and just happy to answer any questions people have, either on live chat or if you want to shoot me emails, you could do that as well. It's Rob at Purest Vitality, PUREST Vitality.com. So happy to help anybody who has questions about dry fasting, water fasting, or just upgraded eating.
Thank you. I think I'm going to put that on the link of the video, and you can also post it in WhatsApp group, our WhatsApp group. Thank you. Thank you, Rob. The email.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
All right, everybody take care. Thanks so much.
You're most welcome.